A question I get a lot on this channel is how long we should be holding isometrics for. It's a question that often comes in relation to static skill holds, especially the sort of holds where we want to subsequently move on to a more advanced version of a skill. The issue with this question though is that it's not at all straightforward to answer. Amongst other things, our training level, joint integrity, and the difficulty of the movement itself will all influence hold time. But today we're going to go through all of this and more and go through a simple rule of thumb that we can use to better understand how long we should be holding our isometrics for, with a specific focus on calisthenics skill work. Quick left turn for an overview on isometrics though, and there are various forms of muscle contractions broadly grouped into 4 types. Concentric contractions, where the muscle shortens under tension. Eccentric contractions, where the muscles lengthen under tension. Isotonic contractions, basically a combination of eccentric and concentric. And today's focus, isometric contractions, where the muscle involved stays the same length under tension. The advantages of training a muscle in this way is that we can build strength in a specific part of the range of motion, which becomes very important for calisthenics athletes who tend to have specific skill needs, usually at the very end range of motion. But when it comes to how long we should be training an isometric for, we need to first be considering our training level. For most of us, these static skills represent something akin to a 1 rep max, so we need to treat them that way. For example, if we wanted to increase our 1 rep max pull-up, it would be very inefficient to just do our max pull-up one time and stop there. A more productive program of work would have us first drop to a level where we could get more volume, say 8 to 12 reps. And here we can build muscle, strengthen connective tissue, improve our form. Only then would we increase weight, lowering the reps as we move to a more strength phase of training, and slowly working to a point where we would be testing our 1 rep pull-up max occasionally. Well, our isometric holds for calisthenics skills work much in the same way. As a beginner, we need to get our capacity for work up. No point in holding an advanced tuck front lever when the form is sloppy, or you can only hold it for 3 seconds. Instead, work on holding a tuck for 15 to 20 seconds, solid form, arms straight, hips in line, master all the elements of the tuck to build a strong base. As we move to a more intermediate level, we can entertain more advanced versions of the hold. And with this, we can shorten our hold times because, coming back to our pull-up analogy, this is akin to increasing the weight on the belt but reducing the number of reps. We've built up the capacity and we're now working on the strength. If we continue this cycle of longer holds at earlier progressions followed by shorter holds at our more advanced progressions, this will help us hit our goal. Now, some of the more quick-witted of you might be thinking about how we can cut out the middleman. For example, what's stopping us from using really heavy bands to produce long holds on the full version of the skill until the whole skill just clicks without bands? Well, I would highly advise against this plan of action, not only because a combination of banded work plus unassisted holds will probably yield the best results, but really have a think about what we're asking of our body here. If we couldn't tuck planche, for example, and we jumped into one of these, would we be leaning as much as we should be in a more attainable planche progression? Would we be protracting at the shoulder as much as in a real planche? Would I be creating the full body tension we'd eventually need? Answers to all these questions is probably not. Regularly using a band in this way is akin to putting weight on a belt but then needing a banded support to complete the rep. It makes little sense, so ditch the ego and regress the skill. And this actually brings me on to what I call the biggest lie in calisthenics skill work. The idea that if we hold a progression for a certain amount of seconds, that will just magically unlock the next progression. This in isolation couldn't be further from the truth. I see so many people holding static progressions for 30, even sometimes 60 seconds and get frustrated about their inability to progress. And I'll be honest, I would too if I was in that position. Dynamic movements and even bent arm movements need to be included in our training. And yeah guys, we are allowed to use bent arm work to ladder up to our straight arm skill work. I'd actually argue that it's necessary. Once we get to these higher tier static holds, it will be all about the detail. And we need to fine tune things outside of just holding the static for longer. Not strong enough? Combine your advanced static with a weighted version of a basic movement in order to strengthen your foundations. Joints a weak link in your isometrics? Condition them with bent arm accessory work. Struggling to keep the arm straight? Incorporate straight arm dynamic movements in your training for increased specificity. All of this is great information though. How do we apply it? How do we know how long we should be holding statics for when it comes to skill work? Well, on this, I have a rule of thumb that I have used and when training others in order to maximize what we can get out of our isometric holds. At the bottom here on the x-axis, we have our typical skill progression, so your typical tuck, advanced tuck, and so on. You can substitute this out with whatever progressions you see fit, so half lay or incline straddle, And on the y-axis, we have the hold time, where in most cases, we want to aim to hold a static skill between 5 and 20 seconds. Coupled with what we discussed earlier on improving conditioning, we want to hold earlier progressions longer and treat more advanced progressions with shorter quote-unquote strength sets, which gives us this trajectory. Holds fewer than 5 seconds, and we wonder if we actually have the strength to perform the skill. It's such a short time that there isn't much benefit to constantly training like this. In fact, training consistently at sub 5-second isometric holds will likely lead to overuse injuries. Now going back to our graphic, if you sit in this area, an honest question to ask yourself is if you are truly ready to start working towards the skill. Would your time be better used on the basics, developing global strength or building muscle first? Pushing past 20 seconds, and we need to start asking ourselves if it's time to progress. These areas here highlight when bands will probably be most effective at helping us bridge the gap between progressions. And of course, we hate anybody who fits into this category. Holding advanced skills with long hold times is the dream. Now, does this mean that we should never hold an isometric for more than 20 seconds? No. There are loads of cases where longer holds can be useful, even preferable. In the same way that sometimes when we test a skill, we might only be able to hold it for 2, maybe even 3 seconds. All of this is just a rule of thumb for getting the most out of our static holds. Despite all of these benefits though, isometrics shouldn't form the majority of our training. And if you want to see how you can train towards a skill through building your own calisthenics training program, then check this video out right here.